the best made plans are the ones that often are going to change. It's just life, right? When we are ourselves and when we do that and we're unapologetic about it, we give other people permission to do the same, because other people are sitting and waiting and wondering, hey, can I be XYZ and still be that person on the stage, or be that person in the front of the room, or that executive, or whatever it is that you're having as a goal, or that mindset. I had a friend of mine tell me, sometimes you have to jump before you get pushed. I have to ask, why do you have that on your wall? And because it shows up really well about as a background in the for your scene there. But it's just a really cool piece of art. So why the Tin Man?
Hey everyone, do me a quick favor and double check that you are a follower or subscriber wherever you listen to the show. I'd be unconditionally grateful. Every new follower, listener, and subscriber helps us keep creating content we love and that you enjoy. It's the best way to ensure you never miss one of my conversations. You are on the sun journey with us, and thank you for that. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Conversations podcast. I am your host, Dr. Alison, and today I'm actually over the moon to introduce Dr. Felicia White. She is the Director of Operations at Askar Management Group. Felicia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You are absolutely welcome. You and I met each other last year, and you have had a lot of kind of interesting twists and turns that have happened, and I'm just excited for us to kind of get into that. This is a long time coming, so I am just really happy that we've been able to make this happen together. And you're going to tell us a story here during the podcast about the amazing bow tie that you are wearing, because that you said it has some special meaning, and that is definitely part of your brand. And I said to you, hey, if you're going to be on the show, I don't usually have a demand, but you must wear one of your beautiful bow ties. So thank you for accommodating me on that.
Absolutely.
No, thank you. Well, before we get started and getting to know a little bit more about you, I like to start out with the segment called the Unword Effect. And let's get into that. Let's talk about what your process was for you when I asked you to think of 3 words with the prefix of un.
Yeah, it was interesting because first I had to think about, okay, what three words have but then from there, I really, I just came up. What were the first words that came to mind that really spoke to me when, if I'm asked that question, kind of, you think about that 5 minute elevator pitch, or somebody's like, oh, $1 million, what three words apply to you? That's what I came up with. That's really how I came about my 3 words. And once I wrote those down, I thought about, yep, these speak to me, and then what I want to share when it comes to those.
Yeah, I think that is I loved your approach because I felt it was probably the most diplomatic one I received so far on the podcast. It was so well thought out from the standpoint is I know I'm speaking to another academic doctor, and you and I come from a very similar background, and so it was really great to hear you talk about your process around it, because it really fit with you. And I think just because you and I have a leadership development background, so thank you for that. Well, let's get into the first one, because you and I share this one, and that was unapologetic.
hmm
What was that word? And see if you can talk to us a bit what that was for you from personally, especially through the journey that you've really been kind of over the past year, and how you've kind of from your and also your leadership journey, which
hmm
I love it, and we're definitely going to dive a bit more into that. So, what was apologetic like for you?
So sure. So unapologetic is it comes twofold. One piece is just not apologizing for the things that you can't control. And there are often times, and I share this, and I'll do a quick plug for chart. That's the Council of Hotel and Restaurant Trainers, and we train on different presentation styles, and what do you do, when you're controlling the audience and so forth. And we sometimes you have that tendency that if something goes wrong, totally out of your control, I don't know, lights go off in the room because the building loses power for 5 minutes. As the trainer, you want to apologize for that. That's
Yeah.
not in your control. Don't
Yes.
apologize for it. Of course, it may change the dynamic of the experience, but it's not your fault. Don't apologize for it. So that's one piece. But the other piece, really, which is where I want to lean more into, is not apologizing for who I am. So the way I show up in the world, the way I show up in a space, in a room, I'm not going to apologize for that. Now, I will always bring my best self to the space. I will always bring a version of myself, or bring the version of myself that will make people feel comfortable, that will connect with others. But I'm not going to diminish who I am or change who I am in order to make someone else, I guess, feel like they know or own who my story and my space. And so that's why I mention about being unapologetic about who I am, because it took me a long time to get to that point where I show up authentically as I am. I lead in an authentic manner, and I'm just going to be who I am. Again, not in any kind of negative way, or not in any way to offend or disrespect someone, but in a way that shows that, hey, I can be who I am and be successful, be all the things, a great trainer, a leader, and so forth. So can you. So I feel like when we are ourselves, and when we do that, and we're unapologetic about it, we give other people permission to do the same, because other people are sitting and waiting and wondering, hey, can I be XYZ and still be that person on the stage, or be that person in the front of the room, or that executive, or whatever it is that you're having as a goal, or that mindset. And so many times people first think they have to change who they are in order to get to those positions. So
Sure. Sure.
mhm.
And I think that's really good because you've held some very high level positions in the hotel and restaurant industry, and making sure that you're also training people, because I mean, customer service is a huge part of the restaurant and hospitality. I mean, it cannot exist without without people, right? I mean, it can't. Um, what, you struck me by saying something that it was a journey for you around the
Mhm.
unapologetic. It was for me as well. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about what you meant around that space? Because it was a journey for me, because I felt myself apologizing for who I am. I felt like I was
Mhm.
apologizing sometimes for how I show up. I was apologizing for in ways of how I do business. And it was definitely a journey for me. And I've shared this before on other podcasts. I've shared this before on my show, where I had to understand truly what that word unapologetic really meant for me,
Mhm.
what it meant for me around my behaviors, how I was showing up, etc. And it was it was something that I talk a lot about through my own executive coaching experience and therapy work that I've done over the past, to really understand what that meant and what it meant uh, in how I show up as a leader today. Do you mind sharing a bit more of what that specific personal journey was like for you?
Sure. And I'll start out by just saying, sharing my personal definition of executive presence. And people take it, you go to workshops and take classes and read books about it. And I just believe that executive presence is showing up as the best version of of yourself as you possibly can. And that is encompassing both physical and of course your, personality, those characteristics, those things that will come out. And so I can recall early in my career, and this is early in my career as I'm starting to really get into training, really getting out of management roles and going into those spaces. And, the first things you do is you see all the other corporate people and how are they dressed and how do they wear their hair and all the things, right?
Yes,
But you see
yes.
those, especially as a woman, you're looking at, okay, so I see how they dress, I see what they wear, I see what they do. And one of the first conferences I went to was a Women's Food Service Forum conference. It was probably one of the first executive conferences or professional conferences I had gone to in my career. And this is way back when, and great organization, by the way. I love their programming, content. Been a part of that organization for years now. But when I was getting they were sharing the know before you go, and you're looking at the pictures and the brochures and all of that. I saw a lot of women in high heel pumps and I say, St. John suits, right?
Yes.
The power suits. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, first of all, this is earlier in my career. I don't know, where do I even buy one of those suits? Can I even afford it? But two, how am I really going to be comfortable wearing that when I go in and when I'm walking through the halls and sitting in the breakout sessions and all of that. And so it was kind of one of those moments where I was faced with, what are you going to do here? Are you going to conform, dress like you feel like you have to from the brochures or what everybody's saying, who's been before, or are you going to flip that to fit you? So again, showing up the best version, but showing up as myself. And
Love it.
so my quote unquote St. John suit became a bow tie and a blazer. And that is how I showed up in the space. Still professional, still the best version of me, but I felt comfortable in that. And I remember winning an award with the organization and presenting on the stage, and I'm standing there with four other fantastic women, and here I am, bow tie, vest, etc. And it became a way to really start owning that brand, but it was my version of a power suit because I've always felt comfortable and I've always felt like I really am owning that space in that room from a dress standpoint when I do that.
Yes. Yes. I love that because I think I think as women, we feel a certain dress means that, it's either a power or we're trying to keep up with the Joneses in the way, and not
Hmm.
necessarily about our own identity and feel. I mean,
Hmm.
lately I've been kind of known for my glasses. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, you wear like the coolest glasses, and they're very bold, and they're this and
Uh-huh.
that." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know I was doing that, but okay." Um, and I think being able to give yourself permission of what makes you
Hmm.
feel comfortable and how you're identifying, feeling comfortable in the way you're feeling and presenting yourself out into the world. That's what makes us all diversely unique in many ways, and
Right.
I'm happy, and that's why I'm so glad that you shared that, because I think it's more important for us to see women dressing and being kind of in our own space and not feeling
Hmm.
like we even have to conform, because women are tough critics too. There is a
Oh,
movement,
absolutely.
yeah, there's a movement out there where we say women are supporting women, and but we also need to make sure that we're really walking the walk and talking
Hmm.
the talk with that, because I think we've gotten better as women in doing that, but I still feel we have some work to still do in that space.
Right.
But no, I think that is really great. Is this a good time to talk about your bow tie, or
I'm, I think we should hold that. Let's
okay?
leave the audience in suspense a little while longer,
I
perhaps.
like it. I like it. Perfect. It's your episode. I love it. That's perfect. Well, let's go into uncompromising.
Okay. Okay. And so uncompromising for me are two things. One, being uncompromising about my values. And I not only for myself, my own personal values, but being uncompromising or not requiring my team to compromise their values as well. So
Yeah.
what those things are that are important to them. So just an example, if a person says that family and their family time is really important to them, I really want to make sure that if there are events that I'm planning or meetings or so forth, that I'm respectful and mindful of that for them because it's a value that they hold important. And so I make it a point to always ask that of my team. What are your values? What are those things that are important? Because I don't want you to feel like you have to compromise in those things in order to be a part of this team and be successful in this team. And I'm not going to do the same thing either because those are it's a part of who you are and it's a part of how you show up in the world and a part of how you lead as well. And so thinking back to being unapologetic about it, you don't want to apologize for those or compromise those values as well. And then the second part of it is being uncompromising about being flexible. Now this is a lesson that I had to learn, and I still am learning that lesson every day. I am a Virgo. I'm a Virgo to the core. And I love, as in anybody who's a Virgo out there that's listening or watching this podcast, I'm sure you'll agree. We love to have things planned out. We love to execute it, stick to the plan. Here it is. This is what we're going to go. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to go and get there and all of the things. And so when that one thing comes about that changes the plan, it throws you off cycle. And for me, it's a behavior that I had to learn that, hey, the best made plans are the ones that often are going to change. It's just life, right? And so when you
Yes.
become, when I've, as I've learned to be flexible, it's also helped me learn to be a better leader with teams because that's truly what it means when we talk about situational leadership and being able to really understand not everyone on your team needs the same type of leadership or wants the same type of leadership. And so being flexible and understanding this is when it's time to change. This is when we're going to change course. And hey, not every directive that comes down comes from you. There's someone as someone at the even if you're the owner of your own business, you may, and I'm sure you can understand this, you may
Yes.
need to change the plan, the model, or what for whatever reason there that something changes when it comes to society. A pandemic happens, who knows? And so that changes what your plan was, and you're in charge. And so being flexible is so important. So I've learned to be uncompromising about being flexible. We have is something that is a part of life. But I think in addition to that, when you really lean in on that, you can help others navigate the emotions that come with change because change is going to happen. It's inevitable, and there are changes that we welcome as people. We choose to have a child, or we choose to move, or those are changes. But so we sign up for the changes, and then sometimes changes happen unexpectedly. You're downsized from a job. You're downsized again from a job, and oh, by the way, as happened with me, you're downsized a third time from another job. And so,
Yes.
but these things happen. It's not in your control. But again, that flexibility, you learn. Okay, so I've been through this. I understand, and I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, yeah, send me a message and LinkedIn or something, and they're like, hey, what tips do you have? What advice do you have? Because I know this has happened to you a couple times, and I had a moment and thought, and it was like, oh yeah, I guess I do have some things I can share, and some because I've been through it and learned from that flexibility because you can't be married to any idea, space, and unfortunately at times a person forever.
Yeah.
As much
Yes.
as you may want that to be the case, a job, whatever it is, you have to understand that change is going to happen, is a part of life. And so building those flexibility muscles to be able to navigate it, I think are so important.
Yeah, you're 100% of that. I'm an Aries, so and I'm a full blown Aries. So I have had to learn over my career to keep the horns in check and not have them come out. And so I as I have evolved in my leadership as I have gotten older and more wiser. I have definitely adapted to because change was certainly not something I took very easily, and certain levels of change I was not able to really adapt very easily. But um, from my standpoint, this is my second company. And so, if you're looking at a lens of an entrepreneurship, you have got to get pretty comfortable with change and flexibility
Hmm.
over the years. I wanted to have us touch on something because you have worked with very large companies, and you've always and you have held, as I said, very high level roles in those companies. When you talk about values, sometimes when someone works in a company, the only values that matter are the values of the company.
Hmm.
And that is then for you to adjust to those values. What is it about your leadership that is so unique that, because I find that right there, I find you to be an unconventionally excellent leader for you to even want to care about the values of um, the people that work with you. How do you balance that? And what is some, because I think that's really important, and how
Hmm.
you actually really instill that, let's just say your team, today, just to give some context to that.
Yeah, sure. So, on the side of the value, every organization, or most, they've spelled out some values, those are the things that help drive their mission. Why are they there? Who are the people they serve? And so you lean in on those values to make sure that the decisions that made, the offerings you put out there in the world, the buildings, the spaces, the people are all part of that, because those values are what helps make that organization be successful. And
Sure.
so, anytime you're joining an organization, you may say, "Oh, this I can connect to these values." You may not connect to all of them, but or you may have, okay, I understand where they're going with that as one of their values, and this is how my team, my department, my role in the organization or function feeds into that and helps to again drive that, because at the end of the day, whatever that reason that business is in business for, those values are put in place to make sure that business can still be in business and operate in the way it has from the way it started to where it may be, however many years later that they're in existence. When it comes to your personal values, those we people, at least there, we know that AI is changing some things the way to work, but at least in my business and in the type of where I'm at in the space that I operate in, AI has yet to be able to truly take over that service aspect and really change those people and be able to replace those things that happen. And so you understand, you work with people, and people don't, as much as you may wish you could just leave it at the door, as they say, so to speak, when you come across the
Yes.
threshold. Now you're that server, you're that, front desk attendant, you're whatever it is. When you come in, you're still you, and you're still a person, and you, whatever maybe that happened before you left home, or whatever personal conflict that could be occurring, something that happened, you bring that into space with you. And I remember learning this lesson years ago when I had was visiting, early as a trainer, visiting with a training manager in a particular unit, and she just wasn't herself that day. The person I was touring with, they said, so and so, she just seems down, kind of almost asking her, well, what's going on? You usually smiley, you're usually bubbly. And she's just like, it's just, a bad day. And the person who was their leader was really kind of saying, oh, so and so must have a bit of an attitude or a chip today. So I
Wow.
pulled that person aside and I asked her, I said, so, hey, what's really going on?
Hmm.
It's that, change that question instead of how are you really doing? And she shared with me that the night before her house had caught on fire. And
Oh,
so she
wow.
had, the only clothes she had was the uniform that she was wearing at work. And first of all, she was at work. And that was, so I just stopped there. I pulled the leader aside. I said, first of all, thank you for so much for even being here. But she needed to be here. She still needed the money now
Yeah,
or more than ever. And
sure.
so I was able to tell, I told the her leader, I said, there are services that our organization offers for this person. Grant, we can get emergency grant money to her today to make sure that she
Wow.
has some place to stay and replace some of the necessities that were lost. And so instead of that visit continuing to be, let's check out your operation and how are things going, this and this, that visit became about how do we help her so she can to
Absolutely.
take care of those needs. And that's what we did for the rest of the time. And so but it just shows you just never know what a person is dealing with. You never know what may be going on with them. And so when it comes to those values in checking in, when a person says family is important or time off or being able to disconnect, whatever it is, that we as leaders are respectful and mindful of that, because if we are, that's when they can be them best selves, bring that best version of themselves to work, to the space, because again, we work with people. We don't work with, at least yet, we don't work with a bunch of robots or just, that are just going to take orders and go. So
Yes.
we should really want to lean in and know. And it's just as simple as asking. That's one of the things I'll do with my team and getting to know them from day one. Anytime I'm part of a new team, whether it's through a job or through an organization, just what are those things that are important to you? And if you truly listen, you're hearing it, you hear about the things they're interested in, what they like to do when they're not at work. And that's how you really understand and make sure that you can be mindful of those things too.
Yeah, I'm so happy you shared that story because we yes, companies are all about, yes, making money, servicing our guests, selling, whatever the business functions are. And I do find that, which is part of the reason why I really wanted to start this podcast, is to really bring back the human side of business. And you share just um, a perfect story that leadership isn't just about leading people from the standpoint of the business itself. And I'm sure you leaning into that uh, employee to find out what was really going on behind the scene, and then on
Hmm.
top of that, being able to provide some type of support that may be available within the company. I mean, that one, I mean, that's a great retention.
Hmm.
Don't even get me started on
Hmm.
company retention. That's a whole nother podcast. But just right there is just showing, we talk about, the family, if you will, which I
Hmm.
kind of get the hairs in the back of my head about that. But that right there is a perfect example about um, not helping people succeed within their job,
Hmm.
also helping them succeed in life, and helping them if there's an issue that happened within their personal life, like how can we really help you and your family so then we can get you back on track. I love that you shared that because I don't think you hear too many stories about that, and that's what I also think leadership really is about. So thank you very, very much for sharing that. I wanted to also touch on flexibility. So when when was it for you where in your leadership, one, what does, if there's an example that you can kind of bring up around that flexibility, um where what was it where you were like, you know what, okay, I'm a Virgo, but
Hmm.
in order for me to be a successful leader, for other people to look up, you're obviously a role model for many people as well. Where did you figure that out for yourself and within your leadership, that that was something that you felt you needed to I don't know necessarily change, but maybe improve upon for yourself?
Sure. And I would say this was it actually brings to mind a performance review I got years ago. This is again early in my career, Mona. Just now starting to move into from a trainer role to starting to lead a department, and had a performance review by someone who was newly my boss at the time. We were, I think, maybe about 3 months, 3 or so months into the relationship. But of course, that was that time of the year, and so since he was there, he was giving my performance review. And I remember going over it, and we had to do the breakdown over the phone, and he was just kind of going through and here's your above average in this area and in this area and this area, but in this area you are you need some improvement. And I'm thinking, I'm going through and I'm listening. Oh yeah, of course above average here, of course, absolutely above average here, absolutely above average here, absolutely. Needs, wait a minute, needs improvement, what? It was almost like the record scratches and everything goes silent. And I'm thinking to myself, in that area actually was communication that he mentioned, was that I was needed improvement in. And what do you mean? I'm a trainer. What actually, of course I communicate well. I'm in the meetings. People know who to reach out to. I give the details. I answer all the emails, and and so he said, and the reason why I'm giving you this needs improvement is because um, no one knows who you are. And again, this was another moment where I'm just thinking, okay, we've been working together for like 3 months. You just don't know who I am. I, and I remember going and telling my best friend, you go, you call her up, and yeah, I just got this my performance review, and but he told me I needed improvement in communication because no one knows who I am. And of course, her being the best friend that she is, was co-signed on everything I said, and she was like, "You're
Right.
right. Don't listen to him." But but it did take time. And what, of course, we have those moments of reflection later, right,
Of
when all the
course.
emotion is out of it, and you're able to really sit and think and really start to understand what it is that actually was being said there. And what he was saying was that no one knew who I was. I was the community. There was a block in communication because not everything could be heard, because I was not showing up. Go back to the first one, being unapologetic. It's like you're kind of a one-sided coin here. People know you for work. They know they could call you about this or that, but what do they really know about you? And people want to connect as humans, especially in this industry. We want to connect with people as a person. I know
Yeah.
you are Dr. Allison. I know you have your podcast. I know these surface things. You may see, okay, I can call Felicia for XYZ and train it from surface. I know those things, but how do I connect with you beyond that? And I liken
Exactly.
it to when you're sitting in the airport and you've got, your mind starts to wander, you're watching people and you're going through and you're thinking, coming up with stories of where those people are going. And,
Right.
you see someone walking by, oh, they probably are on their way to this and they're doing this. And we could be it may be the furthest from what they actually are doing, but we want to connect
Absolutely.
somehow. So we're making up the stories because we don't know the story. And so what he was telling me is that, people don't know the story, so they can't connect with you. They're making up stories, and you don't know what those stories are. And so because I didn't own my story, and I wasn't sharing, I wasn't giving more than just the surface, then it was creating that. And I didn't realize that. And he was further along his career and being around. So that's where I started to really change and connect with people as people. And that's where I had to learn that flexibility, because again, going back to the Virgo, and by the way, I'm extremely introverted too. I want to just come in, hey, let's do the work, let's do the job. you know do you have kids? Maybe, that's great. Not, we don't need to know that to do the job. But it does really, but I did learn that if I'm sharing my story, others can share their stories, who they are. It helps you to be better at work and be better in that space, because again, you could show up as the best version of yourself in that. And that's where that flexibility came in. And there are times even to this day that I have to remind myself to check in on a person. I got a text message just this morning from someone on my team, and they were sharing with me that they had to go to a doctor's appointment with their dad. And I'm just sending text messages about some things just to follow up on and whatnot with her for the day. But I did pause and say, "Hey, I will be praying for you and your family at your father's doctor's appointment," as a
Yes.
text. So it was just taking that again, flexing that flexibility muscle. Yes, I want to go in, let's get these things done. Let me just let you know that I am thinking about you and how that
Absolutely.
appointment is going to go.
Yeah. No, I love
Yeah.
I love what you just said about the store, being able to let people in a bit about who you are. And I think that also goes along with the values that you talked about. How, for me, one, how could I expect people to do the hard work with me if I'm not willing to share a bit about myself? And then also on this podcast, if I'm not willing to go deep and talk about all the different aspects of myself, how can I really expect my guests to do the same? And I think that goes a long way. I'm not saying you have to get into your deepest darkest secrets or anything, of course, but to again, it's really that human aspect, and letting people, giving some sort of identifying factors of somebody. And I think your perfect example of the airport. you I think that's a perfect example. And again, we're just obviously making assumptions or a story up. And I think that's a wonderful leadership quality that you have, and that one you were able to hear. Because I listen, when you're a PhD, you look at sometimes things very literally. So I'm sure when you were going over that performance appraisal, you're like, "Yup, yup, makes sense." Oh, excuse me. We're very results driven kind of
Hmm.
people. So but for you to be able to hear that and see that, and understand kind of what was really behind that, I think was really powerful for you to share. So thank you. Well, the next one we have, which you are definitely this one as well, and that is unique. And I've let two people use that because yes, it starts with a UN, so I
Hmm.
do let it slide a bit. But this one really does fit with you well, and it really did through some of our past conversations with each other. So, what was this word? What did this word mean for you?
Yeah, yeah, unique is just again, leaning back into the unapologetic. It's just me being who I am, and it tends to come off as unique. It's not intentional. I didn't set out and said, "Hey, I want to be the most unique person in the room." In the room, again, remember, I am introverted. Put me in the corner, and I'm good. But because of just the way I show up and the things that I lean in on, it does it does make me unique. And it's just as simple as a bow tie, right? And so I think about recently I went to in this organization. It's just been around for a couple years now, going into third year, Women in Restaurant Leadership. And it was a group that kind of started out of another conference event. Just it started out as a small meetup, and now it's a whole organization. It has its own
Wow,
conference and everything. And
amazing.
so at the conference last year, they were holding a Barbie party. And so it's like, okay, a Barbie party, huh? How does that fit in? What do I do here for the open reception? But I
Were
what I
were we
decided
were we uncomfortable at this moment?
at the moment, I wasn't uncomfortable, but I did have to. I had a moment to think, how am I going to be unique in the Barbie party? Because I'm
Got it.
gonna be myself. I'm gonna,
Yes,
but and I am a Barbie, and so what I did
love it,
was
love it.
I wore this sparkly pink bow tie with
Amazing.
blazer, and so I was still again leaning into who I am in a unique way. Got so many compliments and so many people coming up to me. That is the neatest thing. How did you? Where did you find that, etc. And so it also helps with that unique piece is because I'm introverted. Those become the icebreaker. So I'm the put me in a networking reception where you've got a glass of whatever drink of choice in one hand, and you're just trying to figure out where to put the other hand, and you got to walk the room, and it's like you want to just people come to me, I've got to go introduce. But the bow tie as an example opens up the space for a lot of times where people will come to me. It might be just to compliment my outfit or the tie, or creates a conversation piece. Where'd you get that? Is that, did you self tie it? And by the way, I don't would I you'd be surprised how many men have asked me to help them tie a bow tie before an event and so forth, even at work. And so it's pretty interesting. But those things create that space again for me to just be uniquely who I am, but giving permission for others to do the same. Because a lot of times people will say, "I wonder what if could I have done? Could I wear that?" Or "I wonder if I could pull that off." And you wouldn't know if you didn't try. And so I guess I'll speak a little bit now to the tie I have on
Please.
today. And so because it's become part of a brand for me in doing that. It wasn't one day I said, you know what, I'm gonna make my personal brand bow tie. The other piece of that are cowboy boots. I love to wear cowboy boots too, by the way. but the bow tie piece, people have recognized it, whether through a headshot, through because I may have it, on in most cases. And so I remember one time I was at another chart conference, and for one day I said, I'm not going to wear a bow tie this particular day of the conference because I was doing headshots and I wanted to have a different look for the headshots. And so no bow tie that day. The next day I wore a bow tie, and I had no fewer than at least three people come up to me and say early first before the start of the day, "I'm so glad you're wearing a bow tie today." Me not having one on the day before actually made them uncomfortable.
I,
They were wondering if I was okay because I didn't have on a bow tie. It's like, oh, okay, now you're here. It's almost like you got your bow tie on, you have showed up. Well, I wasn't sure who you
wow.
were yesterday without that,
That's
because
amazing.
again, they connected with me prior to that through that piece. And so this particular bow tie, at the conference we were holding, this was in we were in Kentucky, and one of my good friends from the conference, her name is Sarah Morrissey. She's with a different organization, Scoops, but she had gone out on a tour. I think they had gone on a bourbon tasting or something, one of the pre-conference events. And so she stopped me the last night
Those
of the
sound like my kind of people.
chart people are great people, by the way.
Yeah, and that
So
sounds like my kind of people.
but the we she brought this. We were the last night we were at one of closing celebration event, and she brought this bow tie to me. And she had found, when she had gone before, she said, I saw this when she was at the bourbon tasting, and it says, you can't, maybe you can't see it, but it has Angel's Envy is on the tie. And she said, just wanted to give you this as a gift. Wear it, don't wear it. I love the bow tie, by the way. I think it's the coolest. And not it, with Angel's Envy, I do like the brand, or others I prefer, but I thought it was so cool that she saw that and immediately thought of me to give me the tie, and brought, and purchased it and brought it to me. And I've had other people do the same. I had a person, one of the first bow ties that I got as a very unique bow tie, by the way, was a person from Canada brought it to me at a Women's Food Service Forum conference. And how would you
Wow.
expect that amongst 3,000 people? She would find me. We had never met prior to that conference. That when she brought that tie, and it's a bow tie, antique bow tie that she had found shopping in an antique shop in Canada, and just thought, I'm going to buy it. And if I, by chance, I ran into her at the conference, I'll give it to her. She just happened to run into me at the conference. She had it with her, and a bronze shaped bow tie on a pearl necklace. Looks, I still have it to this day. So
Wow.
those types of things that again stand out, but people feel. part, they feel connected when you have those. So, people feel connected to you with your cool glasses. I know I can expect that Alison to have on some cool glasses, and I could connect to her because maybe glasses are my thing, or maybe I know someone that has glasses, or I just
Yes.
know that when it comes to Dr. Allison, those glasses, I can feel comfortable. She's going to show up. I know she's herself today, and we can do our
Yes.
thing. We can vibe in that space.
Yeah. I love that. This is really kind of cool because I do love Angels Envy Rye. And so that is a little amazing that you're wearing that bow tie. Can I ask? You said it wasn't necessarily your favorite, but it's a cool bow tie. Is there a bourbon or whiskey choice that you do like?
So number one is Uncle Nearest. Number two,
Oh,
Jack Daniels.
yes, of course. Yeah, I do like Uncle Nearest too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
that is a good one. I I do like bourbons, but I tend to
Hmm.
go more onto the rye side of
Okay.
things. It's a just more of my palate, but that is a little crazy that you're wearing an Angel's Envy one. So I love it. That even means more to me that you wore a special bow tie and that there's that connection, just like you said. So, but you're absolutely right about that kind of connection piece, because when I started the podcast, um, and you're talking about, authenticity and being yourself and how you show up. For me, and I will kind of tell this to the audience, you and I didn't know each other. I
Hmm.
basically stalked you on LinkedIn. Uh, and then I connected with you. And one of the reasons why I connected with you is I loved your vibe. I loved your bow tie, just everything about you. And then you're winning, a ton of well respected awards. And I was like, I need to meet this person. And we just connected, right off the bat. And one of my connections with you is when I asked you, I felt you being an unconventionally excellent leader, but I don't define that for my leaders. And obviously through your unwords and the stories that you've shared, it is quite evident that you're for sure an unconventionally excellent leader. So one, I want to thank you again for allowing me to stalk you and us
Well, thank you.
spending so much time together to where we could finally do this podcast. So I'm certainly grateful for it. I wanted to save some time. You and I earlier last year were supposed to do the podcast, and you've
Hmm.
had some changes that occurred. And one, I wanted to commend you too for being very upfront with me, sharing, trusting me, and sharing about your experience and what was going on with you, and that you wanted to do the podcast, but we wanted to find the right time for you. And where we can mutually, and I just love that because that flexibility for me. um One, I wanted to do the podcast with you at that time, but then when we met, knowing about someone's journey and the experience, you said, hey, I think this could add a lot more to the podcast. If we could, you know do it later on where it's going to be mutually, where the timing was going to fit for us. And I'd love for you to share about what that was.
Hmm.
And because it didn't happen once, it
Hmm.
happened twice.
Hmm.
And I think it's important that, this can happen to anybody at any level of the organization. And I think it's important to talk about the emotions around that. I think it's important to talk about, how you, dealt with it. Um, and two, to also, or three actually, to share sometimes your next experience could be something completely that you never
Right.
really thought about, and how you've embraced it.
Mhm.
So I definitely want us to get into that if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So, we were connecting, I think at what had been was with an organization and working in a role, and you reached out, and we had our date set, and I
Yeah.
think we maybe even had our first pre-meeting, and
We
uh
did. We were
and
ready to record.
yeah.
Yes,
And
yes, you're
so, and
right.
then, you get that meeting invite, and you have that call, I had my position had been eliminated. And so I sent you a note, and it just wasn't, the timing wasn't right. And then I'm
Yep,
also now without a role, whatever, who, of course, we in these positions and as leaders, and this is another lesson I've learned. When someone asks, well, who are you, or what is it that you do? We start right away with what our
totally.
job is.
Yep,
We lean into those. Oh yeah, I'm the director of such and such, or I'm the vice president of this, or I manage so and so. And so, and those are a part of who you are.
of
And for
course.
many people, work is very important. Myself, and it's part of my identity. I've gotten some of the best friends that I have to this day in life are people that I met at work. And
Of
so,
course.
people meet spouses and end up marrying them at work. So those things are very closely intertwined. And so when you
Absolutely.
lose that piece, you lose a part of your identity.
Hmm.
And so, I reached, let you know, but maybe once I've settled into whatever the new thing is, I'll let you know, and we can get it rescheduled and get back on the books again. And so I think I reached out, let you know, oh yeah, by the way, I'm now at X company doing X
Yep.
thing. And you're like, great. Well, when we'll reconnect with me once time, sure, there's opening on a calendar for a slot. And it happened again. You get settled
Yep.
in a few months later, and there's another phone call, and it's like, geez, what is going on? You do at a moment almost think, is where it says, well, it's not, maybe it's not, it's not you, it's me. And you're thinking like, well, how do is there really something wrong with me here, that this is happening multiple times?
Which is
But
so common, which is the common first thing you think of. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And I've learned though that it's not uncommon for that to happen to people, and especially in the economy we're in, but not just when it comes to business is changing so much every day.
Yep.
Basically, companies change. There's growth. There is growth modes. There are modes where you're kind of plateauing, and then there's sometimes when you're in a downswing. And whether you are the CEO or vice president or manager, it can happen at all levels, and you can see it from some of the major announcements of layoffs that happen at companies that you never thought that would be the case at. It just changes the dynamic. And so, um, the emotions of it, the first time it happened, the very first time I'd experienced that, I think that, especially having been with the organization for such a long time,
Yes.
that one
Yes.
really, that was probably the one that stung the most. The next time, it wasn't, it hurt. Of course, it's another jar, it's another shock again. There's the unknowns that happens of what am I going to do. Big piece financially.
Sure.
What do I do tomorrow? I'm used to waking up and logging in the email or doing this. So now what do I do? And then when it happens again, it's like, okay, well, I know what I did last time. I know how I lived through that, what I did the next morning, the next day, taking that moment, feeling the feelings, crying when you need to, yelling,
Yeah.
spending that day in bed that you need to do, and then you get up and you keep going, because it's a part of change. Again, is part of life, and sometimes those changes we know about, we see them coming. Sometimes those changes come unexpectedly. But if you're still here, if you wake up the next morning and you still are here, then that means that there's still work for you to do. There's still people for you to maybe lead, motivate, inspire, that you may not even realize. And a lot of times the lessons that the things that we experience may be lessons for other people. And so how you navigate that, how you move through that change, is a lesson for others to learn, and come up, and when they had that experience, they see how, even if it's just seeing through, maybe not even really knowing you and having had a conversation, but they just see how you move through the world and move through this space, that they feel that energy, and it just motivates them to know that, hey, if they got up the next day, and then the next time it happened they got up again, I can too. And we never know when that's occurring. We never know who we are motivating, sometimes who we inspire,
Yep.
people that remember us, or take something away. We're just being ourselves and doing our thing, and others are really learning these very deep life-changing lessons for themselves as a result of that. And so it's I'm at where I am now, and what the work I'm doing now is a little, it's a change. It's a change from what I've been used to in training. This is more operations focused role, but I'm learning so much. It's like, instead of being the trainer, I'm the trainee every day. I'm learning a lesson every single day, that I know I can build that arsenal. And so whatever I end up doing next, whatever that looks like, I have these tools to add to that skill set, and to add to the toolbox to make me a better, even better, whatever that next thing is. And I say whatever that next thing because there is going through that type of experience actually creates freedom in that unknown, and it helps you. I think about one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where it says, "You don't have to see the entire staircase to take the first step."
That's
And
right.
so
Beautiful.
when those changes happen, when those curveballs, whatever you want to call them, rerouted on the GPS, when it comes, you take the first step. You don't know, you may not know where this road is going to end up, where you're going to end up ultimately, but take the step, and you'll see it start to unfold. Every step you go up higher, there's another level that you get to that you didn't see on the very first step. Now you're here, and here's what this space, but then there are more steps still to go. It's another level to get to, and you got to continue taking those steps in order to get there. But don't worry so much about where you're going to be ultimately. Just kind of enjoy and really take in the moments of each of those steps when you get to those spaces. So.
Yeah, let me ask you this. You were at this job for quite the first one. We'll talk about quite a long time. And you said that you obviously built these relationships, and you held a very high role at that company. You know, that of course had to hit you in the gut probably at first. What is some advice that you might be able to, because this can happen to anybody, and where someone's having to close a business, or they end up
Mhm,
losing being laid off, um and what would you recommend, because that's kind of the human side that we're really talking about, and
mhm,
what were some of the things that you were able to do for yourself in that moment, after obviously the uh, uh of course, not to put any words in your mouth, but the initial shock, or crying, or whatever those emotions were that you went through, and then what was it where you went, all right, Felicia?
mhm,
What was that like, if you're able to share? Because we all go through these, and how we try to look at the situation and maneuver through it can be very different than, and some people could get stuck. I mean, they could end up
mhm.
putting the covers over their head, and who knows how long that can be. What was that experience like for you, that you might be able to, one, to share the experience, but two, what sort of advice around that that you feel you've learned?
Sure. So you said it, the shock, that was the word, to be able to lean in on. But, the first thing I would say is to give yourself grace to feel the feelings.
Hmm.
Whatever, if it's anger, if you're sad,
Totally.
confused, all of the things that come about with it. And it's almost like going through a death in a way, when people talk about the stages of grief,
Absolutely.
and you're grieving
Yes,
that,
yes, yes.
you have to work through those, and you have to give yourself grace. And it's harder in leaders because, again, you're like, hey, I'm on stage, I'm the this, I'm that. And so emotion, having that moment where you're where you may cry or you may get mad or whatever it is, just feel it.
Yeah.
Because once you feel it and move through that feeling in that moment, and that feeling may again come back tomorrow, doesn't mean it's you're gonna be angry one time and that's over with. You're
Right.
probably gonna be angry again the next day, and then down the road, or whoever, whatever it is, it may come back, but it is a process. So you have to give yourself grace to understand it's not gonna happen overnight. You're going to feel the way you're gonna feel it, and then you're able to go to the sec. For me, it's like, okay, now we gotta. I'm again a Virgo. Let's get to work.
Yeah.
What's next?
All right.
Is it
Right.
applying for a job? Is it, reaching out to people in your network? Is it, going and doing, doing some, picking up a part-time job somewhere, go drive and do that, whatever it is, to get going, because you do still need to have that thing. If you're going to pick up a hobby, are you going to, take some time off, and what are you going to feel within that time? And so it's just those things, I think, that to help move through. But ultimately, people, I would just say, that's the number one thing, is that you have to give yourself that grace and space. Give
Yeah,
yourself,
that's good.
be
Mm-hmm.
graceful with give yourself the grace to know that, hey, it's not you. And in nine, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, because I don't know 100% of everybody's cases, but
Of
in
course.
most of the time, it is just a business decision. And
Right.
boy,
Yeah.
I'm sure that person, I've had leaders tell me that had to do those, make those decisions, have shared, this is totally not you. I, give you the best recommendation, XYZ. It came down to a business decision, and doing what was had to be done, and a change that I didn't have any control over. And in many cases, the leaders that I had leading me at the time didn't either. And so, leaning back on that, and it's like, okay, it's not me personally, it is business.
Yes.
It's very
Yeah.
personal when you feel it and you think
Oh,
about all the things that come along with it. So don't get
absolutely
me
it
wrong,
does. Yeah.
but that can give you some solace in knowing that, hey, yeah, I was a good employee, whatever your function was. So know that and own that and move forward from there. Don't get stuck in that space though. When you are, like you said, some people get stuck and you're under the bed, under the
Yes.
covers.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
hard, and some days it is hard, and I, there would be, I take a day here, not just be under the cover that day, and let, whatever TV play in the background, and just, lay there. But then tomorrow, okay, tomorrow now I got to get up and get going, and move. So.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and I have many leaders who have shared that on this podcast about grace, and I think we do need to give ourselves that grace, and to feel the feelings, because I think when you're in work, it's still a relationship. It's a
Hmm.
relationship you've had for a really long time, even though it was a business one. But because, like you said, you're building friendships, you're building other colleagues, and that's where you're spending a majority of your time besides at home or with friends, except that's the largest part of someone's life is their work life. So of course there's going to be personal feelings around that, and to let yourself feel whatever those feelings are,
Hmm.
and then to finally hopefully get to that part, like you said, it is a business decision, and maybe that had something to do with you, and even if it did have something to do with you, it may not still be the right place.
Hmm.
And here you are now doing work, which was so amazing when you and I were chatting, because, you went through this once, you went through it a second time, and then you were like, you know what? I am now in a unique space where, if maybe those things didn't happen, you're now like, wow, I'm learning like so much
Hmm.
that you didn't know before. And you were like, I don't know, maybe this is something I would definitely keep doing it. And I think that was a really great attitude around it. And I mean, it's been definitely keeping you quite busy when you
Hmm.
were Please share a little bit about what you are doing now to kind of give some context around that.
Yeah, sure. So it's a director of operations role. So it's an operations role, But I train, I'm kind of in that training mindset with the people that you work with, and in order to get those changes to happen and being able to drive behavior changes and get improvements made. But yeah, it's operations. It's still QSR because I still enjoy that space and hospitality and all of that. So I get
Yes.
to have that and feed that well. But yeah, having that direct P&L responsibility and getting the calls early in the morning. It's been years. I left that years and years ago, even before I started my first training role. That was back then. So I'm going. This is like fast rewind, but also fast forward, and everything that's different from the operations side of the business now. And I back spoke about a little bit about this at a conference just about a month ago, where with a group of individuals again from Chart, and we were talking about operations and training and how those different functions of the organization work together, but sometimes are have different competing priorities. And me living in that, working in that space, and then working with a franchisee organization. I've worked on the franchisor side of things, on the corporate side, if
Wow.
you will, and
Wow.
now I'm working with a franchisee and being able to again learn that and what it is like on that side of it. I had a business. I owned a franchise for years, and as a restaurant in Virgin Islands, so I had a experience of that from the business side, but then now working and understanding what's different there in this space that I'm in now. And so it's a lot of different. It's different. It's harder for me at days. I admit, because it's not something I've done for years, and
Mm.
but I'm learning so much as a result of it too, like Sharon. So it is something that if when you're opening up and you kind of end up moving through, whether it's a different role, different organization, and sometimes you learn so much about a particular business, and especially when you've been there 10, 15 years,
Yes.
that business in and out, and you move into
Yep.
a new business that not only are you maybe learning different functions, but I'm now needing to become an expert in this different business. What do they do different? It may still be QSR, but it's a different product. It's a different service model. It's all those things that go along with it. And so that is where I would say, if I were to, I keep keeping them, telling myself and keeping it kind of like front of mind that, hey, you're the trainee. You're the
Yeah.
learner here, and
Yeah.
learn as much as you can, and do it is while you're working. Continue to learn, and that's one thing I think as leaders we should always keep in mind, is that there's always room to learn. As you think back to Ray Kroc when he said, when you're green you're growing, when you're ripe you're rot.
Yeah.
You always want to continue to learn, and what else is there out there, what's different, what more can I stretch myself at, because that's how we continue to understand what's different in the industry, what's different with people, how we can even be a better leader to our teams by truly continuing to learn ourselves. If we feel like we know it all, and we feel like there's nothing else that's left for us to learn, that's when I really think it's time for you to move on,
I agree.
because you're too
I
comfortable
agree.
at that point. So
That's
now it's
right.
really time to get uncomfortable.
That's right. That's right. I will tell you the theme of really amazing, unconventionally excellent leaders that I've had on this podcast, that has definitely been the common theme. And it has been for me too. I mean, this is a space I didn't go to podcasting school. I mean, I just wanted to educate, talk to other really successful people who have just very unique, different sides of them. But the common thread that I can tell you has always been the learning aspect of it. And they've always said that they are a sponge when it comes to it. And I agree. I think when that begins to fade away from you, that could be one of those check in with yourself and go, wait a minute, am I getting too comfortable? Why am I not excited to learn anymore? And maybe it would be time for a change in some aspect of your life. So Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to give you a moment just to see if there was anything that you felt that we've left out of our conversation today. If there was maybe an additional nugget you wanted to leave. And then I know you're getting excited to turn the tables on me to ask Dr. Allison a question.
Yes. The only thing I'd say I just add in, and it's I guess going with the last piece we were just discussing, and being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and
Mm-hmm.
really moving in that space is a piece of advice that was shared to me once when I, as part of being transitioned, I had a friend of mine tell me, like, sometimes you have to jump before you get pushed. And so that is when you're in that space and you're thinking like, "Hey, am I really comfortable here? Maybe this is where it's time for you to take that leap to jump because
Yep.
you may end up getting pushed if you don't. And it doesn't necessarily mean changing job. What else is there out there? What's the new hobby? Is there something, or organizations you volunteer with? Is there something you've always wanted to try out that you just hadn't gotten around to doing it? Something to give you that, to feel that energy, to feed that energy so that you don't end up getting pushed. So
That
that's it.
that's that I got goosebumps here in that one. That is true because you and I share a little bit. It's interesting because people wouldn't believe this, but I can play an extrovert when I need to, and every assessment shows me as an extrovert. I don't know why, but I can play it and I enjoy it. But then there's this other side of me where I'm an Aries, but I'm a Cancer rising sign. So
Mhm.
there is kind of that crab shell that I need to put over at times. But I I speak in front of large companies and do very high level work with CEOs and boards. Um, but speaking in a podcast or or speaking in general in large audience, I just kind of was like, what? I mean, so I was quite nervous about it. And then when I uh, launched the podcast and talking, it's very second nature. But what's funny
Mhm.
is, you talk to other people and they're like, well, of course, I mean, you can talk to anybody. And, but there, I don't know what it is, but there's just, but it's interesting how other people kind of perceive you,
Right.
because here people would be like, there's no way she's introverted. I mean, look at her with this podcast, or you're up on stages. And so I can absolutely relate to you. So thank you for sharing that as well. So what is your question for me?
So I have to ask, and I've been always noticing this picture in the back, and it's the Tin Man, right?
Yes, it's the Tin
And
Man.
so I have to ask, why do you have that on your wall? And it because it shows up really well about as a background in the for your scene there, but it's just a really cool piece of art. So why
Well,
why the Tin Man?
well, interesting. So there wasn't anything specifically, like it wasn't like I was, with the Wizard of Oz or anything like that. But there is an art show in Fort Worth. So I'm in Dallas. There's an art show in Fort Worth that's called Main Street, and there I love unique art. It could be dark, it could be bright, it could be like anything. And that piece was this funky artist too. Like he really cool. Unfortunately, I don't think he's doing artwork anymore.
Oh,
Um, but that oil can is actually a real oil can that has oil in it. So I have to be really careful
oh
if it
wow.
gets removed. Yes. And but it's and it the Tin Man actually is painted on tin.
Huh.
And yes, so I mean you have to also be careful because the edges are really sharp.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah. So you have to be like really careful. And so but to be honest with you, I just kind of loved it when I was like thinking in my office, okay, what would be some bright space and what kind of would go together and kind of look good
Mhm.
in the background. Not necessarily from a podcast perspective, but just something that could possibly be a conversation piece. But the Tin Man has really just looked over my shoulder, and
Mhm.
I look at the Tin Man as sort of a protector for me.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a fantastic question. It's a very cool. I'm glad it shows up well. But the detail that the artist
Mhm.
has done, and then along with the oil can, I don't know if you can necessarily see
Mhm.
the chain, but it's a special piece and very heavy.
Okay.
It's a very, very heavy piece. You would think it would be quite light, but the Tin Man is really it's a conversational piece
Mhm.
for sure.
Mhm. Well, it's
So
definitely an unconventional piece of work, a piece of
yeah.
artwork. So.
I never realized how much the Tin Man really does protect,
Mhm.
but I will have to say with clients and even on the
Mhm.
podcast, it's been a conversational piece, as I said. But plus, I for some reason it makes people
Yeah, it
comfortable,
does.
which is
Uh-huh.
good because I was hoping the Tin Man wouldn't frighten people too much. Like, whoa, that's a pretty crazy piece you got up there.
No, it's really cool.
Oh, thank you. No, that's a great question. I appreciate it. Well, this wraps up another episode of the Young Conversations podcast. A huge thank you to Dr. Felicia White.
Thank
It
you.
has truly been an honor for me to have you on the show. So thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you for having me.